Hey y'all, thank you for joining my channel. Let's look at what we're going to be looking at today. So this is the picture that I've already started to draw, and we're going to look at some little techniques that you can do to help improve the coloring, pigment, and just some shading techniques that I would like to show y'all. So one thing that you can do to bring out the pigment in your prism colors is by applying a little bit of Vaseline to the tip of your prism color. And this will help enhance the pigment so that it actually shows a little bit more. You also don't have to press as hard to get the color to come through. Usually if you want a darker pigment to come through, you have to press down on the prism colors pretty hard if you don't apply any Vaseline to the tip of it. And it also helps it kind of blend together without using a blending pencil. So most of the time you'll have a colorless blending pencil that you can use to help blend the colors together. But the Vaseline kind of serves as that purpose too. And it'll enhance, the colors, and it'll make everything a lot brighter. It's one of those things that's really nice to have. It's not necessary, but it's just one of those things you can, I don't know, pick up at the dollar store to go with your nice color pencils. Now, it is going to depend on the quality of the color pencil that you have. Prism colors are pretty good pencils. That's what I'm using in this video. And but there's other brands, Aztec. There's Crayola. I mean, there's so many different kinds. And I'm not saying that any of those other ones won't make your picture look just as great. But this Prism colors are very soft color pencils. And they have a very deep pigment in them. So the colors really come through. And the Vaseline just kind of helps with that as well. And you can wipe off your pencil if it gets too much on it, or if the colors start to mix too much, because it will kind of build up on the tip of your pencil. And you'll just have to kind of wipe it clean and start over. But now here you can see that I'm blending together the yellow, and that is like a Tuscan red. So this is an orange. It's like a orange sunrise or something like that, prism color, and then that's a Tuscan red. And if you blend it together, you can see it kind of creates like a deep orange, kind of almost a brownish kind of color, but it gives it that golden hue. And so after I finish adding that little bit of yellow there, I'm going to put in a little bit of green, because this is a dragon's eye. So, I mean, we want it to, look kind of dragony. And even though dragons can kind of be a lot of different colors, but I kind of wanted to do this one, green, kind of lizardy looking kind of deal. So it's just, I mean, you can do a purple dragon if you want to. I don't care. It's just, these are the colors that I was doing. And I started this picture, and I thought it would be a good starting point to go over blending your prism colors into a lot of different things. I mean, a lot of times people will start out with just a set of 12 or 24 prism colors, and so they don't have very many color options. But one good thing about prism colors is you can blend them with multiple colors, kind of like the color wheel, or painting or doing oil pastels, watercolors. You can blend the colors to kind of give it a different look, so it's not just one solid color, and it adds dimension to your picture, and it adds that kind of realness factor. And that's just one thing that makes your picture stand out, your drawing stand out, your painting stand out. You know, even if you're coloring a regular coloring page with Prismacolors, it's still nice to, you know, add that dimension. So it brings the picture forward and it sets the picture back. And so here you can see I'm going up to the top again, and this is just showing you the technique of what I did at the top. Start out with the Tuscan red, and so we're going to, you know, do it a little darker at the tip there so it shows where it's actually going in. It's adding that depth to it with the darker color there. And as we go towards the top, we're going to lighten it up because that's going to lift it. So we're making it where it looks like it's protruded out a little bit. And so as you can see, there's going to be some white paper showing through when you first do this. And that's because that's your base color. And I usually always start with my darkest color when I'm doing my blending. Now, some people will start with a lighter color and blend into the darker. I guess it's a preference. I find it easier to blend darker to lighter than lighter to darker. But a lot of people, like I said, will do it the opposite direction. But to me, if you start out dark and then you go in light, then you can go back in with a lighter color and kind of blend it together where you're picking up from that darkness into the lightness. And you just want to add that depth to your picture. And you can see I'm going around the edges there. Just taking my pencil and blending it well, making it look like it's smooth and transitions well, because you don't want, you know, a solid line, and you want it to blend evenly and smoothly. So now we're taking this this sunrise orange, and you know, it's real yellow, and we're going to add our Vaseline, and this time we're going to go in and fill in where we have the white paper showing. So if you notice, as I'm doing this, this is the second color that I am applying, and you see how bright that yellow comes out with adding that Vaseline, like right off the bat, pop. I mean, just pop. It pops it out right there. And you have no issue seeing that sunrise orange mixed in with that Tuscan red. And that's where the Vaseline really comes in. It brings out that pigment so deep that you don't really have to sit here and spend hours and hours trying to go back and forth on the same spot trying to darken it up, because you want it to be brighter and you want it to fill in. So now you don't see any of the white paper coming through. And if you'll notice, the tip of the pencil is picking up some of that Tuscan red color on the tip because of the Vaseline. And that's okay, because especially when you're blending the two colors together, it's almost kind of like a watercolor painting kind of factor. It just picks up that extra pigment so it can blend it together. Now, if you're using lighter colors, like, you know, if we were doing whites and cream, you would want to wipe off your pencil a little more often, because you wouldn't want to pick up those darker pigments if you're trying to keep it a light color or a light area. And if you can look at it now and see that sunrise orange just added that dimension. It added the dimension from that Tuscan red. I mean, it just really threw it out there. Now, we're going to do the same thing with this true green. And It's not going to be as bright as that Tuscan or that sunrise orange, but you've got to think, this is the third color we're applying. But if you look again, if you were just applying regular Crayolas here, you would have a black. This would be black, because that's what all the colors in the rainbow mix is. It's going to be black. But with that Vaseline and with Prismacolors, because of the pigment being so soft, the color in the pencils are so soft, and you can break these off really easy. You can actually write on your hand and the pigment's going to come off on your hand. But since they are so soft, it's almost kind of like using a Crayola, but it doesn't blend the colors so much that you're creating a mixture of the colors so deep that it's creating that black color. So you can still see the green up at the tip. And so it just adds that extra dimension and that extra value to your picture. And so you can see I circled back here and went back to the beginning, because what I'm trying to do here is highlight this a little bit more and show a little bit more depth to it, because I want to pull that up some. So if I go back and I lighten that up a little bit more, it pulls it forward. So that's what your highlights do when you're doing any type of coloring or blending or shading. Even if you were using, graphite pencils, you need the dark to see the light. And I'm pretty sure Bob Ross said that, but he was very true when he said that you need the dark to see the light. And so you've got to add that dimension to your pictures. So one thing that I really like to do is I like to get these micron pens, and you can use any, good illustration pen. Just something that's really going to show up if you use it over. So the white there is actually a little bit of acrylic white paint pen that I applied to the painting, because I wanted that white to really pop. Well, the white was a little thick around the edges, because it was really hard to get it really thin with the paint pen that I had. So I'm taking this micron black illustration pen, and I'm going around the edges to trim this up to make the edges thinner with the white. And so this just adds that little bit of detail to your picture that gives it a little bit more, technique and detailing that really brings value to your picture that people notice. Because when you take time to actually do the details like this, or as you can see with the veins of the red in the eye, people notice those details. And yes, it does take a little bit longer to actually put those details into your drawings, but those little details are what stands out compared to anybody else's. People will look at it and say, oh, wow, well, I know you put a lot of time and effort into that, because that is something that I know would have taken you a long time. And it may not have taken you very long. I mean, it didn't take very long for me to outline that eye just now, but, if you're just beginning and you're just, starting out, these little details will take you a little bit longer, because you're going to want to take your time and focus on getting them in the right spots and the right placements. And so trimming that out just kind of help bring the eye together. So right here, artists a lot of times will run their hand across the paper, and it creates smudges. And so if you will take a white sheet of paper, and I didn't do this throughout the whole thing, I tried to color with my hand lifted, but sometimes I do run it across. But if you will use a white sheet of paper to put up underneath your hand, then you can set your hand down evenly on the paper to, help balance your hand. And it really comes in handy when you're doing little details and techniques. So right here, I applied the Vaseline to the tip of this tan peach. It's actually a peach prism color. And so going in here, and it actually is a little shine to it because I do have a lot of Vaseline. So I cleaned a little bit of it off because we don't want too much, because then it does start, smudging with your graphite pencils. And it does kind of create the colors to be blended with the graphite, which you can go back and kind of fix later and make the colors really color over them. But right now I'm just going in and showing you. So as I'm doing this, and this is just a pink color that I put over this tan or peach, whatever you want to call it, color. As I'm doing these claws, is you can just watch the variations of adding the colors on top of each other. So we added that peach. Now we're going back in with the pink. So the goal here is, our finished result, we want it to look like flesh. We want it to look like the flesh of the dragon that is connected with the claw. And, we don't want just to color it in like a 5-year-old would color in a coloring book. We want to try to make our drawings look as realistic as we possibly can. So we're going to use a couple of different colors here. So now we're going to move on to, we're going to add some red, and this is a brighter red. We're going to start with this crimson red. It's not as dark as the Tuscan red that we were using earlier. And so we're going to kind of give it that inflammation look. And it's going to add that realness to it. So we don't want to color the entire thing red. We still want to leave some pink flesh. We want to just add where it's connected together to kind of give it the inflammation look. Because, a dragon's claws and, sharp horns or whatever you want to call it, teeth, they are not going to be the cleanest. And they're probably going to be a little rough around and bleeding around the edges because they're pretty tough when they're eating and biting and running into things and scraping up against things and fighting other animals. So, we want it to look realistic, and this crimson red is adding that inflammation look around those little claws that they had, those little horns that are growing out underneath their eye. And so you can see the difference between, the red on the other two versus just the peach and the pink color. It really makes it stand out. And so after we finish this claw, we will be adding one more color because we want to take that Tuscan red that we have in the eye, and we want to continue to try to tie it in to the rest of our dragon, because we don't want to just have a dragon that doesn't flow in color, because any normal animal would flow in color. So we're going to take some of this Tuscan red, and I like to keep my prism colors pretty sharp, because if you have a sharper prism color, then you can really get into the creases. I would say when you're thinking about sharpening your prism colors, think about valleys and mountains, or mountains and hills. You have some that are kind of humps, and then you have some that go deep down in V, more like a mountain would. And if you sharpen your color pencils and you keep them sharp, then you can get down into those deep, I would say, the V's or the edges and the creases of everything, because you want to be able to get it in there really tight, because that's what's going to make the outline of each of your details actually look more realistic. Because if you're just coloring, which I just broke, this one, and they, like I said, they are very soft tips on there, so you will have breakage. And if you've, I think this one actually has a crack in it, so it kind of breaks a little easier than the other ones, but it still works. You just kind of have to work with it, but you may have to resharpen. Just, that's the one thing, take time to sharpen your prism colors. You do not want to color with dull prism colors, dull color pencils. It doesn't really matter what brand they are. And the same thing goes for your pencils when you're drawing. Keep a sharp pencil. I like to use mechanical sketching pencils, and I'll do a video over those a little later on, but it's just one of those things that helps keep your pencil sharp. You're not constantly sharpening your pencils all the time. So here we are on our fourth color for these claws. This is just, it's a darker brown, and I'm just cleaning off, just brushing off a few little flakes from sharpening the pencil there with my little brush. But I usually try to use one of those instead of my hand. It provides it not as smudging as much if you was to use your hand and brush across the paper. But back to this brown, if you can see, we're going back in, and instead of using a black to do around the edges where it's really defined, I chose to use a brown color pencil here because it's a little softer on the edges, but it still gives that definition so that you can see the shadow that's wrapped around to give it more of that 3D look. Because we're drawing on a paper which is two-dimensional, but we want to try to make it look as realistic, 3D as we can. And part of doing that is being able to get into those spaces and making it look like there's shading and shadow. And so if you look at something in real life, the edges of it are going to be darker unless there is a light shining on it. And then that's where your perception and your dimension come in with wherever your lighting is pointed. You have to know where your focal point is at. You have to know where your lighting is coming from. And so in this particular picture, the lighting is more up front. So the focal point is from the front, whereas sometimes it will be to the side. One thing that I like to use is this battery operated eraser. And it comes with different sizes erasers. You can buy them you can buy it on Amazon. I don't think I paid too much for this one. You don't have to get a real expensive one. They all work about the same. Usually takes a AAA battery, AA battery, but you can clean up any smudges that you may have done with your hand, or if you brushed shavings from sharpening your pencils off the paper and it smudged your pencil, because pencil does smudge. And so especially with a picture like this, the more pencil you have on the page, the more you're probably going to get smudging. So this just helps to kind of clean it up really fast. It's fast and easy. You just push the button, and it's like, instead of moving your hand and pressing really hard on the paper, the battery operated eraser just kind of does it for you. And you can go in and kind of clean up your edges, and you would want to do this before you go in with your color pencil, so you won't have all of that graphite up underneath your color. You want to try to avoid mixing your pencil with your with your color pencils, because it will dull your pigments. and that graphite will mix with the pencils. So I usually do try to clean up as much as I can. Now, there are times where maybe the smudge is so much it's going to be difficult to get off, but this little tool is a good thing to have in your artist toolbox because it does clean up the smudges pretty quickly, and it does a good job. It does a lot better of a job than the end of a pencil eraser, or especially when you have like one of those big bulky block erasers. It's really hard to get into those little bitty, areas where you've made those details of those small little blocks, especially for drawings like this. It just makes it a little bit easier to get into those. And